Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. I'm Justin. I'm here in studio with my trusty sidekick and executive assistant by day, Jennifer Carter.
Good afternoon.
And you can call us live at 512-390-1370 or send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking about a lot of the turmoil that exists out there in the world today as far as financial markets go. And, you know, the last really year or so, it's been more or less kind of a humdrum with the stock market. But, you know, this week we've seen some pretty significant moves, and there's a lot of concern out there. So we want to talk also a little bit about America's Greece. We actually have something like Greece going on with Puerto Rico. $72 billion underwater and begging for a bankruptcy lifeline. You know, Puerto Rico is not a state. It's just a commonwealth, not protected under our bankruptcy laws. So does that mean that the U.S. is going to let them fold, or is the U.S. going to step in and prop them up? Well, we're going to have Josh Bernstein from the Association for Mature American Citizens here on the show today. He's studied this matter, and he studied it more than U.S. senators, and I don't know if that's saying much, but I'm sure he studied it a lot. I'm not sure how much our senators are up on, this state of Puerto Rico's debt and the fiscal cliff that they're facing. But you definitely want to stay tuned for Josh Bernstein's predictions on which way our government may go and whether or not Puerto Rico is too big to fail. And if we bail them out with your tax dollars, my tax dollars, will they be looking for another handout next year? Right? It's kind of that old, teach a man to, give a man a fish, feed him a day. Teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. Right? Which is it with Puerto Rico? And most important, how is this going to affect your retirement? Because this is a retirement show, a retirement journey. So we want you to be informed about some of the things that are going on out there. A lot of big talk, before we get to Josh Bernstein, a lot of big talk about China, a lot of big talk about maybe a global potential slowdown, right? And whether or not we're due for a correction in the market. We're going to be talking later in this show in our news and views segment a little bit more about some of the things that we saw this week. You know, just this Friday, if you were paying attention to the markets, which I'm sure you probably were, you saw that the Dow was down significant, as well as the S&P 500, really across the board reds. And there's a lot of concern right now from our clients, as well as probably you, as to whether or not you're in the right position when it comes to your retirement savings. You really need to be aware of the forces or factors that impact our markets. And they are coming from overseas in many cases. I've got an article here that we're going to go through. This is from thestreet.com. And just to give you an idea, most signs point to material systemic risk in U.S. equity markets. This is from this article by James Hickman, dated 8/21/2015. The title is Market Headed for Correction. Here's what could happen. And he goes on to say that the vexing question as to where do equity markets go from here persists. At what point do negative domestic and global fundamentals plus inflated risk asset values outweigh the leavening effect of zero-bound interest rate policies? That's a lot of finance speak to are we due for a correction, and how big of a correction are some of these experts predicting? Remember, I joke about the crystal ball we have there in my conference room, in my office. We don't know the future. That's true. But, you know, once there's some consensus that we're going up or going down, sometimes there's self-fulfilling prophecy to a lot of this stuff. And we want to make sure that you're informed. So stay tuned for that. Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about Josh Bernstein?
Yes, absolutely. Josh Bernstein, a radio host, author, political strategist, and no-holds-barred commentator. He's a pro-Christian Jewish conservative who detests anti-Semitism just as much as Christian bias. His articles can be found on Examiner, Breitbart, Right Wing News, the Tea Party Tribune, the Pundit Press, Wayne Dupree, and others. Josh is also the director of communications for the Tea Party community. Welcome,
Josh. How you doing?
Oh, it's great to be with you.
Hey, we probably don't have to ask you much about your political affiliations and thoughts with your resume going on. But we're excited to have you on. We, little known, I guess, in a lot of, in many circles, we've got an American Greece going on with Puerto Rico.
We certainly do. And, let this be a warning to all of America, because what has happened there, we've seen, we can back up and talk about what happened in Europe and with actually Greece. And we saw that with this last one in the austerity movement, we saw that, they bailed them out again. Now, when they bailed them out this last time, they put provisions in there. So apparently it just goes back to the old adage that when you're asking for a handout, there's always going to be strings attached to it. And we know that the handout from the European Union has very strict restrictions on Greece. Now, the same thing could happen here. I don't know. Granted, Puerto Rico is a much smaller caliber as far as, the economy in itself. I think we have other worries like China and Russia and Iran and some of these other things that could implode around us. But ultimately, this could be America's Greece. It could be the start of it. And the reason I say that is because the number 2 sector of the entire Puerto Rican economy is the government. And so they have a bloated government that they've had for quite some time. The Commonwealth has been run by progressives, whether they be Republican or Democrat or liberals or conservatives. They're still progressives. And they're a big government, Commonwealth. And apparently, as we have now seen over time, they can't pay the piper anymore. And they've defaulted on a huge amount of debt. Right now, they are trying to see if they can have the bankruptcy law protections of the United States, but there's one problem with that. They are a Commonwealth, not a United State, so therefore they do not apply to that.
And Josh, we're gonna have to rush to a break here just in a minute, but that's Josh Bernstein, spokesman for Association for Mature American Citizens. We're talking about America's Greece, Puerto Rico. Liberal nation drowning in debt wants bankruptcy lifeline. One problem, Commonwealths not protected by bankruptcy law. We're going to talk about that. We're going to speak more with Josh Bernstein. When we get back, you're going to want to stay tuned and see how this could impact you and your retirement plans. Remember, you can call us live at 512-390-1370 or send us questions, comments to ask@fortwm.com. This is Justin Fort. The show is Retirement Journey, and this is Talk 1370. This is Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. Again, you can call us live at 512-390-1370 or send us your questions to ask@fortwm.com. If you've got a question for Josh Bernstein, feel free to give us a call, or you've got a comment about Puerto Rico, whether or not the U.S. should be stepping in to bail them out or not. What's your opinion? We want to hear it. So give us a call. We'd love to chat with you. So we're visiting with Josh Bernstein. So Josh, you're a spokesperson for the Association for Mature American Citizens. Can you just tell us a little bit about that association?
Sure, absolutely. We are the conservative alternative to groups out there like AARP. And what we are is a senior-based organization for folks that are 50 years of age or older. And when we lobby on behalf of Congress, things like that, we make sure that we answer to our members, and we look for conservative solutions to healthcare decisions, making sure that seniors have more say in their healthcare decisions. And we don't do things like, lobby and get $2.8 billion and then lobby and turn around and then exempt our members from being part of Obamacare and things like that. So we're not afraid to roll our sleeves up, tackle the tough issues, Social Security, solvency issues, Medicare, Medicaid, estate planning, and then we also have small business solutions. We have insurances, Medicare supplement plans. We've got travel insurance. So we pretty much have a lot of the same types of things that an AARP has. The only difference is we are a conservative-based organization.
Oh, thank you for that explanation,
Sure.
Josh. And I believe the default position in life is maybe liberalism. You've said before, and you've also said that you have to work at being a conservative. And how do you explain that?
Well, the way I would explain that is that when we're born, for the most part, we're liberals. We're ideologically indestructible. We feel as though, basically we believe everything, and our brains are basically mush, and we're very susceptible to lots of different things. And then what happens is as you get older, at least hopefully, as you get older, you start to kind of figure things out more. You get more independent. You get to a point where you're paying taxes, and you have a job, and you have a wife, and you have kids, and you have a family, and you have responsibilities. And I think over time what ends up happening is you become more conservative, just like Winston Churchill's famous statement. But taking that a step further, the default position in life is liberalism. In other words, it's easier to be a liberal. It's easier to accept a handout instead of trying to do something, to better yourself. Not all people feel that way, but a large percentage of people feel that way. So what I always say is you actually have to work at being a conservative. You have to actually work at doing certain things and creating certain things. And I think that's why the default position in life, again, is liberalism.
And when we were talking about Puerto Rico today and the way that relates to that idea, and I was going to say something I thought was funny in my head. Maybe it's not that funny, but all our brains are mush. Maybe when we're younger, I think maybe for men, our brains may become more solid by at least 30. It may take us a little bit longer than
you should hope
than women's.
So longer, yeah.
Maybe longer than that. Jennifer thinks like past 30. So hopefully my brain's not completely mush still. But so yes, Puerto Rico. Looking at I've done some of my own limited research here into their situation, and it does look like a lot of the causes to their crisis are related to entitlement programs, related to high minimum wage, related to the fact that they can't compete with their neighboring island countries there in the Caribbean. And there's Jennifer. You told me a little bit about Puerto Rico, the fact that your experience.
Yes, because I'm from Puerto Rico, so yeah, living there is the economy was really, really bad, so that's why we came to the States. And
a lot of people would when they finish school there, what do they do?
Oh yeah, as soon as they graduate, they want to leave. There's just no jobs there.
Then
right.
That's a problem. So.
And that brings us to the political aspect of this whole entire thing. As these folks realize that they don't have the jobs and that they don't see the future, if you will, being there, they're now going to start flooding into the United States. I mean, they're not going to go to Canada. They're not going to go to Africa. They're not going to go to Europe or Australia. They're going to come here because, again, there's that connection being the Commonwealth, obviously not a state, but the Commonwealth. And so they're all going to come here, again, because of location. It's also, closer for them as well. So when you take that into consideration, the left, in this case, liberals, they look at this as an opportunity. What did Rahm Emanuel say? Never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, here would be a perfect idea for these folks to come into America and then be able to vote and, again, change our elections even more. We already know that the left has wanted for the longest time to create the 51st state, or if you're Barack Obama, the 58th state, for Puerto Rico. Because, again, from an electoral standpoint, they know that it'll benefit the Democrats. So you can look at that from that perspective as well. And then from a legislative perspective, we know that they are not allowed to vote for the presidency and the vice president. We also know that they cannot use our bankruptcy laws because they are a commonwealth, as you stated earlier, rather than, an actual state. So I could see this administration possibly pushing either through an executive order to change the bankruptcy laws to help them, to give them the bailout that they need. And then I could see the left turning around and saying to the right, if you don't believe in bailing out Puerto Rico, then you're a racist. You see what I'm saying? So I can see this whole thing happen. Now, granted, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But if it gets worse and worse and worse and it becomes something that they have to deal with, that's more than likely what they may do.
Well, and it does make sense to not put this kind of problem into a, racially charged situation or, argue over things that aren't material to correcting the situation. Clearly, it's an economic, fiscal policy, government policy problem that's been going on there with Puerto Rico for some time. And, we're speaking with Josh Bernstein, spokesman for Association for Mature American Citizens. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, where it's all about the health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. I'm Justin, and you can call us live at 512-390-1370 if you have a thought or a comment as to whether or not you believe it's the responsibility of the U.S. government and your tax money should be used to prop up a situation that just looks like it's not going to be improved unless tough decisions are made. Give us a call. We'd like to hear from you and get your insight. Josh, according to Thomas Jefferson, there's a quote here I have. It says, a government large enough to give you everything is also large enough to take everything away. Right? And this is call it a conservative idea, if you will, but really a lot of times whether...
it's pragmatic.
It's pragmatic, yeah. And I don't think it needs to be necessarily tied to a political party or something, or a left or a right. Sometimes it's just logic that should dictate what we do. And, looking at Puerto Rico, pretty big, government there. Some of the statistics I looked up, this is from, where is this from? This is from the Puerto Rico Debt Crisis Explained by Robert Rosenkrantz. He talks about how the single most telling statistic with respect to Puerto Rico is that only 40% of the population versus 63% on the U.S. mainland is employed or even looking for work. And he attributes this to a variety of reasons, like minimum wage being far too high for competing Caribbean islands, like we talked about, regulations on overtime, paid vacation, dismissals. The costs are more onerous for companies there than even on the U.S. mainland. And what I thought was just appalling, and this is a good reason for people not to work. And this is a problem. We don't want to incentivize people to not work. And one estimate shows that a household of 3 that is eligible for food stamps, AFDC, Medicaid, and utility subsidies could receive something like $1,743 a month. And that amount is actually higher than the median family income on the island. There's motivation not to work.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with you. And also their poverty rate, as far as folks being in poverty, is higher than that of Detroit. So, this is something that's been going on for a long time. Like I said, it's a progressive island. It's been run like that for the longest time. 23.7% of the Puerto Rican economy, the second largest sector, is the government. And again, they're having these issues, and these issues are not going away. So now, what are they doing? They're trying to cut back on teachers. They're trying to cut back on municipalities, and even crime prevention. Firefighters and the police and things like that. They're trying to get their fiscal house in order. And again, if they would have just forced people, like you said earlier, to actually be incentivized to work rather than de-incentivized to work, they wouldn't be in this situation right now.
And Josh, when we get back from this break, I want to talk about the impact that we may see here in the United States, whether we choose to bail them out or not, and whether or not that's the right thing to do. And when we get back, we'll delve more deeply into that, so you're going to want to stay tuned. I'm Justin. This is Retirement Journey Talk 1370. Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. You can call us at 512-390-1370 or send us questions, comments to ask@fortwm.com. We're visiting with Josh Bernstein today. He's the spokesperson for Association for Mature American Citizens, which is, as Josh put it, a conservative alternative to another association similar to AARP. And we're speaking with Josh about America's Greece. Puerto Rico, liberal nation drowning in debt, wants bankruptcy lifeline. One problem is that Puerto Rico is a commonwealth, and commonwealths are not protected by bankruptcy law. So to get them protected, Josh, what would the U.S. federal government have to do?
Well, I think there's three scenarios. Again, if right now, because of the bankruptcy laws, they could actually put up legislation that could change those laws to allow, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico to be privy and part of those laws and be able to take part in them. That's one thing they could do. The other thing that they could do is... Would
that have to be bipartisan?
Yeah, of course it would. Of course it would. Yeah, it would have to be, done through legislation, of course. At least you would think it would. The other thing they could do is absolutely nothing and just kind of let it go and let them fend for themselves, which personally I think they should. I think we should do.
I agree.
Well, Congress is pretty good at doing nothing.
Well, no, that's the unfortunate part. They usually want to bail everybody out. And, we have to keep the government running, and we can't shut down the government. And then the Republicans, they buy into it. Oh, we can't allow the government to shut down. We'll be blamed for it. Really? Well, you weren't blamed for it in 2014 when you took over the Senate and increased your gains in the House to historical levels. So again, there's a lot of other political things that we could talk about with that. But more importantly, the most dangerous part of this whole thing is that, the president just decides to act on his own and issues an executive order to include them in the bankruptcy proceedings.
Oh, wow. So President Obama can just do that.
Well, could he do an illegal executive amnesty where clearly the Constitution states that Congress shall have the power to establish rules of naturalization? He didn't care about that. So again, it hasn't stopped him all these other times from doing executive orders. I've said this on my show. We are living in a post-constitutional world right now with the first post-constitutional president that is running the country by executive fiat.
Maybe they should all be fired.
Again,
you're fired.
My whole thing is,
you're fired.
If we have the House and the Senate, and I call Mitch McConnell KFC, I call him the Kentucky Fried Chicken on my show. All right,
no.
He's from Kentucky. His brain is fried, and he's obviously a chicken because he's afraid to fight back and fight for his constitutional principles. And you have John Boehner in the House, so we don't really have a House and a Senate. Just like Ted Cruz said, what's the point? You might as well have left Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi in there because we're getting the same exact results, which is one reason why Donald Trump is resonating so much, but we can talk about that another time.
Yeah, we'll have to pull back to Puerto Rico now.
Right. Where is this bailout going to come from? We are almost $20 trillion in debt. We have $98 trillion in unfunded liabilities. We're in bad shape. We can't afford to bail out anything else, any other countries. So for my sake, I say we just let them fend for themselves and let them learn the hard way that government handouts, there's always going to be a price to pay.
Sure, and so let's say if we bail them out, that's going to be coming directly onto our balance sheet, ever increasing debt-wise, right? That's going to make our country more unstable, which we know, economically speaking. I mean, we're already, screaming fiscal train wreck, and we've heard that from for years now.
24 trillion is the magic number.
And so, but of course, then there's arguments. People will say, well, if we don't, then we're going to get hit short term, and we can't afford it right now because we may be looming on another recession, who knows? The world is a dangerous...
correction
scary,
is a nice way of saying it.
Yeah. So if we don't do anything, can you explain to us what you think, talk near term,
again, I think the markets are going to react either way. I mean, we just saw $500 down in the Dow. We've seen China lose, $3.5 trillion in the past 30 days in their stock market.
Yeah, they're down about 11.5% this week.
Yeah. And again, I do more political analysis than I do market analysis, but sure, I can touch on that as well. So again, when you have an administration that is purposely keeping inflation in check, they are cooking the books, so to speak, and making sure that the rates stay low. You have the devaluation of the dollar. Eventually, it's all going to have to come to a head. And they've been talking about this for a long time now, for at least the last 8 to 10 months, that another correction, as you'll say, is coming. This could be a very bad one. It could be a very, very severe one. We saw what happened with the mortgage industry and the housing crash and everything else. This could be just as worse because, again, we've been keeping interest rates low on purpose to not shaken the economy. But we know that we have to raise those interest rates ever so slightly, and we're not doing that. We've kept the prime rate practically at zero for I don't know how many months now, and we're not seeing sustained growth. And, look, there's 95 million people out of the workforce, the most since, I believe, 1976. You got 56 million women out of work. You got over 50 million people on food stamps, 10 to 12 million people on disability because most of them are on it because their 99 months of unemployment ran out. We've taken the work requirement out of welfare. So we have done a lot of things to create the financial situation that we're in. And more importantly, Obamacare is what's keeping the economy in America from expanding because small businesses are scared to death of it.
And that's Josh Bernstein, spokesperson for Association for Mature Americans. We're speaking with Josh about America's Greece, Puerto Rico, liberal nation drowning in debt, wants bankruptcy lifeline. One problem, they're a commonwealth, not protected by bankruptcy laws, but our U.S. government does have, our federal government does have some ability to change that in terms of bailing them out if they chose. There's some executive order options that Josh spoke about. There's a bipartisan decision that can be made in Congress to do this. But, would that just be putting, a Band-Aid on the problem? And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. This show is all about health, wealth, and freedom you need to live life your way, all the way. We want you to be informed. We want you to be involved. I'm Justin, and you can call us live at 512-390-1370. You can send us questions and comments to ask@fortwm.com. I talked a little bit, was it last week, about termites, and we don't want termites in our portfolios. We don't want termites in our retirement plan. And, termites don't just wake you up at night. They are pretty good at staying hidden, staying deep within the woods of your home or your place of work or whatever it is that you have. And, we don't find out that termites are there usually until really it's almost too late. And usually when we're selling a property. Well, a lot like termites, in a portfolio, we may look at some of these other countries like Puerto Rico, China, Europe that have some fiscal problems, have debt problems, somewhat similar to us, but maybe even worse in some cases. And we've got a portfolio of assets in our 401k, our IRAs, our Roths, our non-qualified accounts that are investing in these places. And you're unaware of how much damage those termites have really done. And the last thing we want to do is to correct the problem, add wood to the pile. We really need to get, like an ABC in here, right? A pest control company to come and spray those termites and fix and correct the problem for good. And a bailout in this case may be just adding more wood to that pile, is what you're saying, Josh.
Yeah, I totally would agree with that. I think that we have to look at the fact that they are $72 billion in public debt. And, they're seeking our protection. And, we can't do it. We cannot keep doing it. They owe $58 million to Puerto Rico's Public Finance Corporation, and they are now looking at ways to, I guess, eliminate as much government as they can. They're trying to cut the fat off if they can, but ultimately we cannot have what we have seen happen in Europe with Greece here in America, which again is why it is so important that we get back on the right track here in 2016 with someone that's actually going to attack the problems rather than just manage the decay.
So, Josh, is the Association for Mature American Citizens, are you guys doing something with respect to your members, encouraging them to write to their congressmen, encouraging what are you guys doing as far as?
Well, I think overall what we do is we do a lot of polling. We do a lot of things where we reach out to our members and kind of ask them questions, what's important to you? What would you like to see done? And then, when we lobby on behalf of Congress, we make sure that we take some of those suggestions. We answer to our members. We don't answer to the lobbyist groups. And we go to Washington and we try to be that conservative alternative, that conservative voice that these senators and Congress folks are not hearing because they are being inundated with AARP and left-wing ideology and policies and Obamacare and handing them out more money, and if you vote for this, we'll give you more money and this and that. We don't do anything like that. So this is truly a David versus Goliath situation. We do have over 1.3 million members, and we're growing every day. And again, folks, if they want to know more, they can go to amac.us. Again, www.amac.us. It's only $16 a year to join. And again, we are that conservative alternative. So we're not afraid to talk about the tough issues and deal with those tough issues as far as Social Security and solvency issues and making the country a better place for seniors, as well as giving them more choice in their health care decisions. And
Josh, I want to make sure that everyone is clear on the fact that we want the best for Puerto Rico. We want the best for our neighboring countries, that our commonwealths, our states. We want the best because really, from an economic standpoint, I guarantee if we get any PhD in economics on the show, we've had some in the past on this show, talk about how important it is to have strong trading partners and foreign economies that are humming along and that are not subject to these proverbial termites, if you will, bad fiscal policies, high levels of debt. And, so we want long-term Puerto Rican people to be able to fish for themselves, create the jobs there so they don't have to leave their country to find the work that they need to grow their families and to prosper and have their own retirements the way they want them according to their wishes. So, we're just talking about what's the best way to do this, what's the impact on the United States, and what are Puerto Rico's some of the options. And I've got an article here again that I referenced earlier. I just want to talk a little bit about some options that Puerto Rico may have and how this could impact you and your posterity for maybe generations to come. What's decided here. So we'll be back with more on that. I'm Justin, Retirement Journey Talk 1370. Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort, and we're visiting with Josh Bernstein, spokesman for Association for Mature American Citizens. We're talking about America's Greece, Puerto Rico, liberal nation drowning in debt, wants bankruptcy lifeline. One problem: commonwealths are not protected by bankruptcy laws. But you may have an opinion on this. You may not have an opinion on this. Either way, it's going to impact you in some way or another. It's going to impact potentially your retirement future for the good, the bad. To really quantify that, Josh, what would you say would be kind of an impact we might? Why should our listeners be concerned about this?
Well, I think they should be concerned because if we end up bailing them out, who's to say that another territory or something like that gets into trouble in the future, now all of a sudden they're looking to be bailed out. And I think that once you open up the bailouts, other people start looking at that and saying, well, if one is going to bail out, then why not bail out this one or bail out that one? And we can't afford to do that. I mean, we're in a financial position where every single thing that is being proposed, you have to ask these words, how are we going to pay for it? And if we can't pay for something, if we don't have a way to, secure the funding for something without spending more money and borrowing more money and taxing more people, then we don't need it. And in this case, again, with Puerto Rico, I'll say that completely. I'm against us, doing anything, getting involved, spending any money, spending any of our future children's and, their generation of children's money. We're already over $60,000 per child, in debt, for when they turn 18. So, again, we're in a situation where we've got to take care of our own house. We can't worry about other homes out there to clean up their houses as well.
Yeah, Josh, I have a lot of people, as you know, during the week. I'm a financial planner working with people here in the greater Austin area, helping them put together a solid plan that they can hold through their retirement. And we have to make some decisions as to what level of risk we take, if we take risk at all in a market scenario, what kind of assets we need to be holding, income sources from Social Security and other things are being relied on. And of course, a lot of the sentiment that folks are telling me is that they're just concerned that if we have another major situation or crisis, we're just not going to have the cannon fodder to be able to bail ourselves out again. And so, there's just a lot of concern related to that. And we know that our government really hasn't done a whole lot to rein in the spending levels. And, we hear talk of tax increases. And so there's a lot of things on the horizon. There's a new normal. We talked to Dr. Romero. He's a professor of finance at the University of Oregon about 2 weeks ago. He's author of Macroeconomic Edge, and he's talking about how really equity markets are going to be looking, growth-wise, to be on the lighter side. We're going to talk a little bit more on that in our News and Views segment coming up. But, things like Puerto Rico, China, foreign economies that we trade with, that in some that are tied to us, like a Commonwealth scenario, if we end up bailing them out and using up cannon fodder that we could have used for ourselves, this could be putting us maybe a little bit more risk than is necessary.
Without a doubt. And I think what we have to understand is that if there was a major correction or a crash, if you will, that a lot of people have said may be coming, we may have a situation in which the government just takes over all of our retirement plans, pension plans. Again, in a worst-case scenario, we're not talking about bailouts. We're talking about bail-ins, where you would actually have a situation in which you find in Europe where you go to try to get your money out and you can't. They won't allow it. They won't allow people to take money out of the bank. I could foresee, if the crash was as bad as some people have said that it could possibly be, I could see a scenario in which the banks will not allow you to take your money, and therefore that money is there for the government. We're in some dangerous, treacherous times.
Josh, you bring that up, and some people may be rolling their eyes thinking, oh, that's never going to happen. But you know what? I actually have people that are concerned about just that. I have a sweet lady that I've been working with for the past couple of months, and she's a Cuban American, and she knows firsthand what governments can do to people and their assets. They're from Cuba, and she's really, honestly, she's concerned about the U.S. government following some kind of suit in that fashion and getting a hold of her assets that are sitting in 401ks and IRAs, and she's looking at asking us for help as to how she can position those things best in case some of these really negative scenarios come to fruition. And that's my job as a planner, is to help people do what they're trying to do, but do it better, and to try to look for ways to put their assets in a position that they want, that helps them sleep well at night. understanding the financial planning principles, all these things. So I have to do this day in and day out. I'm, kind of like boots on the ground with folks out there. So I hear the sentiment firsthand, and people open up to me and they express to me their concerns. And part of my job is to look for solutions and answers. And, it just is the way it is with the respect to the world. We just have to recognize and be real about the situation, drive with our eyes wide open, and understand that things are probably not going to be the way they have been. And things are going to continue to be, perilous in some ways, fantastic in other ways. There's going to be innovations. There's going to be, just like any other time decades ago. But you know what? History in some cases repeats itself, but not exactly. And in the financial markets and with countries, we're seeing a situation now that's just more or less unprecedented. We're as connected as ever in the world. We've got people being able to trade in our stock markets that we've never seen being able to trade in our stock markets with clicks of a button. And they're impacting our clients' ability to retire. So we have to make plans and put things in position that protect our clients as much as possible from these types of real risks. Just to kind of get back to Puerto Rico, one last thing I wanted to read from this article from Huffington Post by Robert Rosenkrantz. The solution that they're talking about in this article, it says that the way out is that both comprehensive and ambitious plans have to be put into place. The federal government, the bondholders, and the government of Puerto Rico must all make difficult decisions. The solution must begin with a revival of growth. The key is supply-side reforms. The Commonwealth can fix local labor regulations and eliminate obstacles to doing business. It can bring energy costs down by opening competition for electric generation to new and more efficient suppliers. The federal government needs to make welfare payments consistent with local market conditions, so important, and suspend the federal minimum wage and exempt Puerto Rico from the Jones Act, which relates to their energy sources and supply that they have access to. Would you agree with those recommendations for the most part?
I think a lot of those things would probably help the situation. Ultimately, I think what they need to do is they need to shrink the size of the public sector as best they can and create more jobs, and not government jobs, but create more jobs for the people on the island, from manufacturing to farming, to wholesale distribution, to more doctors and things like that.
Sounds like what we need to do here too.
Of course, it is. It is without a doubt. And they're in a tough spot, but it's not something that is a death sentence either. If they take the right things now and really focus on cutting them, they're going to have to make some hard decisions. And there's a lot of people out there, including in America, that don't want X, Y, and Z cut. They're used to this, they're used to that, and this and that. Well, it can't go on forever, because eventually you've got to pay the piper. And right now we have a situation where there's too many people in the wagon, and nobody can pull it. It's just too heavy, and that's what's going on. And again, we're getting to that level here in America. If you remember back in the election, Mitt Romney and his 47% comment, well, he wasn't exactly entirely right. He was probably about 7 points off of that. And I believe that number is somewhere between 36 and 37%. And now, again, removing the work requirement of welfare and things like that, and the fact that there's so many people not working, that number could have increased to a little over 40%. That number needs to go back down into the high 20s or mid 20s, which is a functioning, amount in society. I'd like to see, practically nothing. But in reality, there's going to be, the people that are infirm. There's going to be people that special needs that obviously just can't work, and I get that, and we've got to take care of those folks. But putting the requirement back into welfare is one of the first things that needs to be done, and curbing some of these handouts.
That's Josh Bernstein, spokesperson for Association for Mature Americans, conservative alternative to AARP. Josh, we want to thank you for being on the show today, giving us some insight into what the Association for Mature American Citizens is doing about some of the issues that face our country. And can you again tell our listeners how they can contact AMAC?
Sure, yes. You can go to www.amac.us. Again, amac.us. You can also call 1-888-262-2006. Again, 888-262-2006. And if you want to learn more about myself, you can go to joshbernsteinpoliticalwriter.com, all one word, joshbernsteinpoliticalwriter.com. Or honestly, just go to Google, put in Josh Bernstein radio talk show host, TV host, and you'll find 6 or 7 pages of stuff on me.
Thank you, Josh, so much. We look forward to having you back on the show, maybe sometime in the future. Great information. Take care, Josh.
No problem.
We're going to be going to break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about whether or not the market's headed for a real correction and what could happen. I've got a couple of articles here that we're going to just kind of talk a little bit about that you're going to want to stay tuned for sure. How does all this impact you? What should you be doing? Again, I'm Justin. This is Retirement Journey Talk 1370. Talk 1370. You're listening to Retirement Journey with Justin Fort. You can call us at 512-390-1370. So markets were pretty wild this week, as you know, on to the downside, and I don't want to add more negativity to what is already looking fairly negative. But of course, it's important to take all things into account when deciding for yourself whether or not you're in the right position with your retirement, with your assets. The right amount of risk is a trick. How much should you have? Where should it be? How do you do that? And at Fort Wealth Management, I'm a certified financial planner professional, a chartered financial consultant, retirement income certified professional. As you know, I also graduated from the University of Texas here, Macomb School of Business with degree in finance, Hook'em Horns. My board op back there, so give me the Hook'em Horn sign. So that doesn't mean I know everything. As much as I'd like to pretend that I do, I don't. But I do know enough to realize that for many people that come into my office, we assess what they want, what their wishes are. I find often they're just at too much risk with respect to their wishes and the amount of assets they've got and the amount of income they need. And is this you? Do you know if you're in the right position? Do you actually have a plan that takes into account the risks that are in different positions? And it's okay to take risk, right? It's got to be the right kind of risk for the right amounts, for the right purposes. Because the whole reason for taking risk really is to get growth. Growth followed by what? More money that you can take, you can spend, or leave behind. There's purposes behind it. We've got this article here from James Hickman. This is from thestreet.com. It says market headed for correction. Here's what could happen. We're in what appears to be, according to this article and many others, a tranquil period in stock market history, defined as uninterrupted stretches in which the S&P 500 closes within 10% of its all-time peak, never end well. Historically low downside volatility is the backdrop for sudden and sometimes precipitous instability. And this is explained by Hyman Minsk in The Financial Instability Hypothesis. So there's some science to this stuff. There's some science to this financial planning stuff. And it's not just someone trying to sell you something. It's not just a gut feeling. It's not a crystal ball. There's a science to this, and you need to have that applied to your portfolio, your retirement plan, so that you have the most edge. We want you to be in a position where you're the house, you're the casino, you're not the participant playing against the house or the casino. We want to make sure that we've got you in the right position. The S&P is currently in the fourth longest streak of tranquility since 1960. Each of the periods was sustained by a unique and ultimately flawed narrative, from the tech bubble of the 1990s to the most enduring, to the credit housing bubble of 2000, the shortest. The current streak, of course, has been animated or extended by quantitative easing and zero bound interest rate policies. We talked about Frankenstein last week, and this may be the territory we're in now. The median maximum drawdown after periods like this, following such tranquil periods, according to this article, is negative 43%. Can you afford to lose 43% in the position that you've got with your assets at market risk? And if that's not the case, you know what? Get the right amount there or get out, because you can't afford to be rolling the dice. I see this all too often. I want you to come in and see me if you need some help on that. I'll give you the honest opinion, the real opinion, and our consultations are free. I don't make recommendations until I understand what you want, need, and my job is to help you do what you're trying to do, but better. And so we want to make sure that you are making the best decisions you can make according to your wishes, not mine. We are going to be coming back next week, same time, same channel, 12:30 to 1:30. And as if you don't have enough to worry about already, try to make this a positive show, but you also need to worry about paying higher taxes. Some experts have suggested that tax rates have to double just to keep our country solvent. If tax rates go up, how much of your hard-earned money will you really get to keep? In David McKnight's groundbreaking book, The Power of Zero, How to Get to the 0% Tax Bracket and Transform Your Retirement, he provides you with a step-by-step roadmap on how to get to the 0% tax bracket, effectively eliminating tax rate risk from your retirement picture. Why is the 0% tax bracket so powerful? Because if tax rates do double, sometimes twice as much, zero is still zero. The day of reckoning is fast approaching. Next week, get ready to do what it takes to experience the power of zero. This is Justin Fort, Retirement Journey Talk 1370.